All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank everyone for joining this morning. We have quite a large class, so thank you again for joining our webinar about managing inventory in eCC Desktop. And today is February 20th. So a bit of housekeeping before we get started. Today's webinar is going to last for about an hour. And all the participants right now, you guys are muted, and I will be taking questions kind of at the end of sections, and when I go into the product, I'll be taking all of your questions there. So you can submit your questions in the questions area. You will see your GoToMeeting dashboard to your right-hand side. You'll see a questions area. Go ahead and put your questions in there. And I can address all questions during the question and answer forum as well. So today's presenter is myself, Allegra Mitchell, and I am the Customer Success Manager here at Quibgility. So if this is your first time to our webinars, welcome. If you are joining before, welcome back. A little housekeeping I like to do is present the company to you because you probably are all very familiar with our product, but I would like for you to be familiar with the company as well. We're headquartered here in San Francisco, California, and we have our business development and our support centers in Indore, India. And we serve thousands of small to medium-sized business customers worldwide. We've been certified with Intuit since 2007, and we're partnered with top e-commerce platforms such as Magento, BigCommerce, to provide shipping integration if you need it, and also we're partnered with hosted QuickBooks providers such as Bright Networks. And we also have hundreds of web designers, developers, QuickBooks Pro advisors that are always promoting our products. And our products are eCC Desktop, eCC Cloud, and ShipLark. So the agenda for today. The first thing I want to talk about is managing e-commerce inventory 101. These are just things you should know about managing inventory within an e-commerce space. Then I'll go into the types of items. You may hear the terminology kind of thrown around: simple item, variation, option, configurable products. So I really want to kind of take the mystery out of these type of products and really present this in a really easy way. And then I'll talk about how eCC Desktop handles inventory, and then of course I'll be taking questions all throughout the entire presentation, especially within our Q&A forum. Managing Inventory 101. And I want to begin this with kind of the who, what, when, where, why, and how of inventory. So the first question is, who maintains your inventory? Is it you personally? Is it somebody in your staff? What are they doing? How are they receiving inventory? How are they maintaining the inventory? All this kind of goes into the business flow of how you run your business. What is your master inventory location? Now this is very important, and this kind of builds on who maintains your inventory. So whoever is maintaining your inventory, they're obviously putting the inventory in one place or receiving the inventory in one place. That could be either the online store or it could be in QuickBooks. Whatever place that is your master inventory location. That is a place where you can always depend on your products or your product quantity to be correct. Next question. When do you update your inventory? So now we know who's updating the inventory, in what location, and when. At the beginning of the day, end of the day, middle of the day? Do you kind of have your inventory in flux until maybe twice a year you do a full inventory count? So is your inventory fluid? So do you have drop shippers that have some of your inventory? You have some of your inventory? So again, these are just kind of critical questions of how you are running your business in terms of inventory management. The next question is, where is your inventory right now? Do you know where your inventory is? Do you know, if you have a drop shipper, do you know how much inventory they have? Do you know when is the threshold for replenishing your inventory, either in the online store or in QuickBooks? So knowing where your inventory is exactly at this moment is crucial to even begin crucial to beginning to understand how to manage your inventory. Next question, how are you currently maintaining your correct inventory levels? And this is really important because the maintenance of inventory and the maintenance of quantity, that is how you manage your inventory. So how are you maintaining this? Are you doing the twice a year inventory count? Are you kind of equalizing your inventory every week, every day? You know, how big of a role is this? Managing inventory plays a crucial role into having a successful small business and a successful small business that is primarily within the e-commerce industry. And the last question is, why is this important? It's important because knowing where your inventory is, how you're updating your inventory, what location that is, who is maintaining, all will help you to understand and grow your business, because inventory is where asset is held. And when you know what money is going in, what's going out, when you know your asset, your most widely sold item, or your items that kind of don't have a lot of sell-through, you're able to make educated decisions about where to take your business next. And all of that boils down to accounting. Knowing how much inventory you have is extremely important. It'll govern how much you purchase. It'll govern what you purchase from a vendor. It'll govern how and where your expenses will lie. Okay, so I really just wanted to kind of talk about the who, what, when, where, why, and how about managing e-commerce inventory. So now we're going to go into the various types of items. And as you know, different shopping carts, marketplaces have their own type of way of talking about their items. So, I want to go into definitions, but as I was making this presentation, I really wanted to move away from the word definition, because this definition of item, it could be different. And you don't want to get held up within the definition of something. So rather than call it a definition, we're going to call it a behavior. And knowing the behavior of an item will govern how that item is handled by the online store, or how kind of how to treat that item, or how that item is structured. So behavior equals structure, equals knowledge of how the many pieces and parts of this item are structured. The first thing I want to talk about are attributes. So you may have heard this word referred. Attributes are like attributes of color. And you can have attributes of sizes, so small, medium, and large. The next area are options. So options are associated with attributes. So this can be the small, the medium, the large, the extra large. In terms of color, it can be the red, the green, and the blue. So, kind of options are of attributes. So the next thing I want to talk about are variants. So a variant is a product with an attribute, and each option of that attribute has a unique identifier. So I have two shirts here. One is orange, one is white. They're different shirts. Therefore, they have different SKUs. The next thing is a base product. So a base product is pretty much the product you're viewing. It's the cosmetic. It looks pretty. It governs it has underneath it options or variants that are associated with this base product. And I'll talk more about the base product and kind of highlight how the base product is structured, and leading on to my next point of a child item. So a base product is pretty much like a parent item. It structures the variant. And a child item, these are the variants. These are the combination of option values for the parent item. So kind of starting, we've got, and with inventory, when you look at something, you're looking at an object, but an object has qualities, and these qualities will determine the behavior of a product. So now that we kind of have that taken care of, let's go to how some online stores structure their products. So now that we know our behavior, let's look at this at a deeper level. So a simple product. A simple product is an item with a single unique identifier. There's an individual SKU for the color of this item. And so what you're looking at is the base product. And on the right, I've got leather ball, black, purple, and blue. And these are my SKUs. This is how I structure my SKUs. So each one of those SKUs is different. And since it's different, it's unique to that color, to that item. That is a simple product. Another thing, let's talk about variation. So this is looking specifically within the Amazon interface. I'm very sure you're familiar with these type of shoes. They come in a multitude of sizes and colors. So this is a really good example of a base product. When I search for this particular product, I'm looking at the shoe. I can see the red shoe, but it isn't until I actually choose the size. That is when I choose the size, I am now actually choosing the product. So the variation is holding the unique SKU. And underneath this I have, so this is kind of the manifestation of what this particular product looks like in the back end. I've got my shoe, it's in red, and I've got small and it's in blue. I've got a small, it's in black. I've got small and it's in red. So these variations build on each other. So for one product, depending on how many qualities you have within that product, your variation will become all the combinations of that. I want to check for some questions kind of before. Are there any questions? Are there any questions does anyone have about this particular topic before I go on? I just want to make sure everyone's with me because I know that handling inventory and kind of dispelling the mystery of products is a really big thing. So I just want to make sure everybody's staying with me. All right, so I see no questions. All right, I'm going to move on. So the next thing I want to show you are variations within a WooCommerce store because I wanted to show you how the combinations of a particular variation is built. So just like in Amazon, WooCommerce handles variations in the same way. It's a combination. So based on my base product, I can put in all of my qualities about a product, and WooCommerce, which is really cool, it can spit out all of the combinations. So one product, depending on the combination, will have exponentially the amount of variations. So I just wanted to kind of show that to you on the back end so I can kind of relate that aspect of variations and unique SKU within variation. And why is the unique SKU with a variation important? That is kind of the cornerstone of product management between two interfaces. I will go into that when I go into the product. So now that we know kind of that having a unique SKU for each variation is extremely important, when I go into the product, I will show you how that carries between QuickBooks and how eCC handles those particular products. So the next thing I want to talk about is a configurable product. For variations, you'll hear this term thrown around in Magento, but I want to just talk about the behavior of a configurable product because some online shopping carts call this a variation. So let's just talk behavior. Now we know that a product can have multiple attributes. So each attribute, so now this is really about the attribute associations. So each attribute has a SKU. Let's say I have a t-shirt. Here's my shirt. Here's my shirt in white. Here's the same shirt in small. So all of these, so these are essentially the same product, but I'm connecting or configuring or combining different attributes to get the SKU for my product. So, and as the user chooses these attributes, they are building their SKU. So again, this goes into the combinations, but the unique thing about a configurable product, or a product that is constructed and connected in this way, is that the user has control over each little piece, and the customer has control over each little piece that they're choosing. So, if you're selling, car parts, you have to construct different parts that construct an entire piece that goes into a car. So that's kind of how these configurable products, or the behavior of a product that is constructed like this, is created. So these various attributes, they combine using a separator. So a separator is just space in between each one of these pieces. So most commonly you'll see a dash. Sometimes you can see two dashes or a plus sign. One thing about a separator, you never want to use a colon, which is a dot dot. You never want to use that, because QuickBooks uses dot dot to denote a parent-child relationship. So if you're using eCC, this is just a tip, if you're using eCC to transfer a product from, let's say, Magento into QuickBooks using eCC, and within your SKU you've got a colon as a separator, you'll hit an error, because eCC knows that colon to be associated with something completely different in QuickBooks. So it'll have difficulty transferring that product over. So when you're constructing your SKUs, it's very, very important to keep these little nuances in mind. So I want to talk a little bit about identifiers. And as a way of identifying, kind of, well, what are the types of inventory types do I have to work with? So I talked about online shopping cart identifiers. I want to talk about QuickBooks item identifiers, because since eCC connects with accounting, it's able to automate your accounting. In order to automate accounting, it has to see what it needs to count, and it needs to count products. But QuickBooks has its own way of identifying an item. So you've got kind of, I think, and this is with financials. I'm going to get to point of sale on the next slide. So an inventory item. The way QuickBooks identifies an item is an alphanumeric field called item name and number. If you're creating an inventory item, that inventory is holding quantity. Same with a non-inventory item. So a non-inventory item holds no quantity, so there's no inventory asset associated with that. A non-inventory item is good for, if you've got software downloadables you're selling, that's really good, or you don't care about inventory. If you don't care about keeping the numerical value of your inventory, that's okay too. You just need to structure it in a way that signifies that. And by structuring, when I mean structuring, I mean creating the product in QuickBooks that doesn't have any type of inventory or quantity associated with it. In QuickBooks Point of Sale, you've got different options. You've got more options. You've got your item name and number, SKU, UPC, ALU. Those are different fields of identifying or putting data that identifies the product within Point of Sale. And then, of course, you've got parent items and you've got child items. So I want to talk about, and this is with QuickBooks Financials, I want to talk a little bit about parent and child items and how they look in QuickBooks. That's really, really important. So a parent item, as I mentioned before, kind of holds, that's like the base product. That's a product that the user or the customer who's ordering something sees. The parent item always has underneath it child items that are connected to it. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at, this is our leather ball, for example, in the first slide talking about a simple product. We're now applying this simple product as a parent and child item relationship. So as you can see, the leather ball is the one at the top. Going below that, you see we have the colon separator. This is strictly a QuickBooks thing. So QuickBooks will naturally apply this colon to a child, to a product that is a sub-item or child item to a parent item. So we've got our parent item. As you can see, it's kind of structured that way. It's just the SKU. But the real power in this is or are the child items. So as you can see, the child item is really leather ball with 1L underscore 3, 1, and then 2. And it's a sub-item or associated with the parent item. So the child item SKU always has the parent item attached to it within QuickBooks. So the entire SKU is the child of the entire SKU of the child item has the parent attached to it. And that's really important to know. If you have this type of relationship between your products and your QuickBooks, let's say this child item, since eCC will be looking at the SKU as in leatherball underscore LB colon leatherball with 1L underscore 3, that's what your SKU should be in the online shopping cart. So that's why this is extremely important to understand how QuickBooks identifies a product. Now, I mentioned, I briefly mentioned about point of sale and identifying either using the item number, the SKU, the UPC, ALU. About QuickBooks point of sale, when you're dealing with point of sale, you have a brick and mortar store. The items are physically there. So if you have 3 sunglasses and they're all different, I can see that they're all different. I have them all in front of me. So each product has an attribute, but those attributes, they're individual products into themselves, because I have a pair of glasses that are black. I can see them. I want to maintain quantity and account for this particular model of glasses. If I have the same glasses in red, I can see that I have that pair of glasses in red, and I want to be able to maintain inventory between that specific one. So even though you've got, let's say you've got one style of glasses, because there's different colors and because each of those are kind of physical units, each item with an attribute becomes a simple product. Ooh, I have a question. Let's see. This is a really important question. Child item equal assembly. It's very, very cool to ask. Thank you for asking that. Assembly items are special. And the reason why they're special is that they are unique to QuickBooks. Now, an assembly item, they're basically pieces, and pieces that you put together to create an item. So the interaction with that item, they're pretty much they're the sum of all the parts. An item for an assembly item is made up of all of its parts. You would build this item by using a build or a work order within QuickBooks. And you can only make a finished product if you have enough of the assembly item to create it. So an assembly item is kind of like an advanced child item that are all dependent on its cohorts to create the finished product. And that structure is completely different. With eCC, you aren't able to create a product in QuickBooks as an assembly item, because the interaction and the handling of those particular items are completely unrelated, and it's a bit difficult, especially if your assembly items have a unit of measure and you need certain, like a length of string. If you don't have that length of string, you cannot make that product. So that's a really good question, Tom. Thank you. Another question. How do you keep a working relationship between work in progress inventory and finished inventory through QuickBooks? That's a really great question. And this is another business flow, how you run your business. Okay, so how do you keep a working relationship between inventory and progress? In progress. So inventory that's in progress, I'm assuming that you sent a purchase order to your vendor for how much you want, and that quantity is en route. And this is a rule of thumb. Unless you physically have that inventory, you cannot account for it. The reason why, what if, your vendor says, I'm going to ship you 10, and you're like, okay, I'm just going to adjust that quantity to 10, but you really receive only 8, you've got a discrepancy of 2. That's going to hurt your asset account and lower that. So until you physically have the quantity, physically see that quantity, do not account for it, because you can't account for things you cannot see. If you physically have it, how do you account for it? Update it in your master location. So if you've got the inventory, receive it to where you have established where you receive your inventory. And that is why having a master location for inventory is so crucial, because it's really for you. You know, it's really so you can have a standardized area of where you can depend on your inventory being correct. And that is key, because e-commerce goes fast and you have to move at that speed. And the only way you can move at the speed of e-commerce is knowing where your inventory is, or knowing where things are. So that's a great question. Thank you for that. So this brings me to my area of things to remember. So I know this is a lot. This webinar is going to be recorded, so if you kind of are thinking about this, trying to digest this, you can always watch this webinar again and see what more information you can pick up about this. But things to remember. Many shopping carts have their own terminology for item attribute combinations. So a variation in WooCommerce behaves the same way as an option in BigCommerce. So that's why at the beginning of the presentation I was like, you know, let's not call them definitions. Let's call them behaviors. Because once you know the behavior of a product, or how a cart structures their product, you're able to know then how to structure your business to account for that product, and what your options are, or how to move forward with receiving that information. So the behavior of the item's construction will guide you. If you know that, okay, I'm working in a particular store, and oh, great, into the construction of the cart they've got separators. If they've got separators, then I know that each one of my attributes hold a unique SKU, and the customer will choose their product, and the options or attributes will build themselves to create, as I like to call it, a meta SKU. And so once you know the behavior, you can then predict, okay, how do I standardize? And I want to highlight this point as so essential to e-commerce inventory. The item naming convention is so important. You must standardize it. And what I mean by standardize is the SKU that you see in the online store. When you see that same SKU in your QuickBooks, you should know exactly what that product is. So your naming convention can incorporate abbreviation of what the product is called. So it is extreme, and so that will help whoever is updating inventory. It'll help, like let's say you're in a point of sale, if you're in a brick and mortar store, a cashier is ringing up something, they know exactly what it is. They can immediately identify if something is wrong because they know the standardization of how a product is expressed. And also the reason why it's very important, and with that I'm going to segue into the product, is because when you're setting up how eCC handles inventory, making sure the data is the same in the places where eCC needs to view this data is extremely important. It's the most important piece of inventory management. So before I go directly into the product and show you this, now that we have the knowledge about, okay, item behaviors, okay, standardization of how a product is expressed in the online store in QuickBooks. So now that we have that knowledge, we can then get a better understanding of how eCC views these products. So are there any other questions about any of these type of product behaviors that I've been talking about before I go into eCC? Okay, no questions. I will continue. This is a very quiet class. I do encourage you to ask me any questions. Ask me anything. So I'm in the product. Okay, so we have our inventory or our product knowledge behind us. Let's talk about how eCC handles this. So to do that, or to set up how eCC handles products, we need to go into the configuration of the store. Right now I'm looking at the dashboard. This should be very familiar to people that are using eCC. If it's your first time using eCC, the dashboard is like your home screen. And from the home screen you can pretty much go anywhere you want within the product. Now for this, I'm going to go to File, Configure Store, and I'm going to go into the Products area. Now, when you're in the Products area, this is where our knowledge of how our products are structured come into play. And it highlights itself. The first question is select product matching criteria. Let's talk about matching criteria. Matching criteria is the state of the SKU in the online store equals how the product is expressed in QuickBooks. I like to call it its corresponding twin because it is a twin, really. It's an identical twin. It's in two places, but the data should be identical. The goal of this is you want your products to match. And I call it, and when you have the data that is the same in the areas where eCC is looking at them, so in the online store, I can have SKU, ID, model number, or product name. If that is the same as the QuickBooks item name and number, the product organically matches. And I like to call it organic matching because you don't have to do anything to it. If a customer orders those products, eCC downloads that order, you can post that order to QuickBooks no problem. You don't have to worry about mapping. And mapping corrects the problem of the data that doesn't match, but the product is the same. So I know that sounds a little bit confusing. I'll go into that in a minute, but let me just talk about matching again. So matching is extremely important. If your products don't match, you're going to have to fix it by mapping. So for example, my online store SKU is SKU123. Its corresponding twin in QuickBooks, its item name and number, is also called SKU123. They match. My inventory management between that product is complete. Now, if something did not match, so if products fall out of this matching criteria, then we correct it by mapping. So again, let's take our same example. My online store SKU is SKU123. My item name and number for the corresponding twin is SKUABC. That obviously doesn't match. eCC will say, oh, this is missing because the SKU in the online store doesn't match the item name and number. I think this product is missing. And this is why you have under how to handle missing products to create the prompt to create a missing product or map it with another item in QuickBooks. So if you're like when you post this order to QuickBooks, if you say, oh, this product's in there, I know it's in there, I put it in there myself, the SKU is SKUABC, then you're going to have to map SKU123 in the online store with SKUABC. And you have made the relationship. eCC now recognizes that relationship and will post the order to QuickBooks and account for the correct item. But let's say something happens to the mapping. As soon as you change anything about the product identifier, so let's say in QuickBooks I made my SKU ABC a child item of something else. You have essentially severed the mapped relationship, and you have to redo your mappings. And you may not see it until you post the order to QuickBooks. and you're like, oh, all of these are just kind of jumbled. That's why matching is important. You don't really want to have to do anything to your products other than maintain inventory. You don't want to have an identifier preventing you from posting the orders to QuickBooks or really kind of assuredly managing inventory or syncing inventory. You want to see what you see, you want to always know is correct. So now that we know the importance of matching criteria, I'm going to show you how eCC views your products. And for that, going back to the dashboard, going to Products, menu heading, My Products. So eCC is like a big pair of glasses. It's able to view your QuickBooks products and your online store products all within the same area. Here are my matching products. One cool thing about the matching criteria, you can determine what information or what data is matching when you go to these areas and you see the column in blue. This is a quick, like, oh, my QuickBooks item name and number is configured to match with my SKU in my online store. So if you're ever wondering, oh, how do I determine what the matching criteria is, blue columns equal matching criteria. If I match the criteria of product name would be in blue. So as you can see with these matched products, my SKU in QuickBooks is the same as the SKU in the online store. There are no problems. I don't really have to think about this product. I can focus on maintaining inventory. So it brings me to my next area, mapping. So here are the map products. As you can see, here are my blue columns. We know those are the matching. So this particular product, SKU-Badminton Kit, obviously that SKU does not match SKU SKU 131. So in order to force that relationship, I've mapped them together. But mappings can break sometimes. So it's very, very important that you have as many products matching as possible. Are there any questions about matching and mapping? It is a very quiet class here. I do hope to get some more questions. We have quite a large class. So I do encourage you to ask many questions. You never know. Someone else could be having that question and you have just answered or helped kind of answer that question for somebody else. So definitely lots of questions. So now that we know how eCC handles these products or view these products, let's talk about, thank you, I have a question. Where should you ensure that they match? Update QuickBooks or online store? The ultimate goal is to have products match versus having to map correct. Yes, Dana, that is correct. The ultimate goal is to have them matching. Now, to kind of dovetail off of Anna's question, where should you ensure that they match? You should ensure that they match in the data fields that you have established eCC to look for the information. So in this case, I want to make sure my SKU is exactly, in my online store, is exactly the same as my item name and number in QuickBooks. I've got another question. So you just need to make sure the SKUs match in your store in QuickBooks and map if they don't? Exactly. But we don't want to have to map because mapping confuses things. Mapping corrects corrects data that doesn't match. And because let's say you've got 2,000 products, if you saw in this area 2,000 matching products, that is like the coolest thing ever because you know that the data is the same and the only thing you have to worry about is synchronizing. So you want to see, your goal is to have as many matching items as possible. Next question. So to make the update, you would go back to the online store and update the SKU name? Yes. Yes. And, you know, a lot of these things are really maintenance and or laying the groundwork. And I definitely would like to touch on this point because it's really, really important to have that standardization of SKU. So when you're laying the foundation of making sure that your data matches, when you're ready to insert eCC into the equation, you have the knowledge of knowing everything is going to be fine in terms of product management. So the foundation of the products and the structure of the products and how they're expressed is extremely important. And if you're kind of using eCC after the fact to try and get that, eCC is really great because you just kind of have to kind of start from eCC. Okay, where is my data the same? Where does my data match? All right, make eCC look for the information in those areas. All right, now I can find, and kind of another question is, how do I find the information that doesn't match? So let's say you've got like kind of a gobbledygook of how you've been organizing your products. Where do you identify what's missing or what products are outside of the matching criteria? This is really good. You can go to map products. So products and then map products. This tells you everything eCC views as missing. So all the products that fall out of the matching criteria. I have another question. In my Amazon store, a lot of products aren't mapped because there is an asterisk before the item number. Where did that come from? The asterisk is there. The asterisk means nothing. Some carts like to display it, others don't. The asterisk means nothing. The asterisk is not an identifier or a separator. It's just there. So you don't need to worry about the asterisk. All right. Oh, I'm getting lots of questions. Thank you. So I have 2,600 in QuickBooks, very large database, and 1,000 in online store, 690 match, great start, 8 mapped, okay. We don't have everything accounted for, looks like. Can this be updated in eCC, or I have the online store updated and make them the same? Yeah. You want to go, okay, so it sounds like you're using eCC. You know what the matching criteria is. You've got to make the data the same. Once you make the data the same, you will have 1,056 matching. So it's really important that, and eCC can automate a lot of things. eCC can automate accounting. It can automate keeping your quantity synchronized. But the foundation of making sure the data is the same in the places where eCC is looking at the data or looking for the data, that is so essential, and that is something that's for you. And by doing that, yes, Anna, you want to have 2,600 products matching. Yes. And by doing that, you will know where everything is. And that's the whole point. Knowledge will determine how you move forward. Knowledge will determine how to grow and have a successful business. Running or building a small business is hard, but running it should be easy. And when you run it easy, and the hard part is the foundation, getting everything together, getting everything standardized. That's hard. That takes a lot of time. But when you bring eCC in the equation to help run your business, that is what we're going to make easy. And knowing the foundation makes it easy. So very good questions. Thank you all. And I want to segue to, running your business is easy and how we can make it easy. I want to segue into the resources that are at your fingertips that you have access to for making running your business easy. So in case you are not familiar, we do have Customer Success Squad. Our Customer Success Squad, we do implementation services. So if you purchase a QuickBooks Point of Sale or Enterprise, implementation comes with your, comes with your your particular plan, eCC Cloud or Shiplark or Pro Premier plans, you will have to purchase implementation services, but we've got installation packages, training packages, and here are your friendly staff in the Customer Success Squad, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out and send us an email at cs@bgilit.com. Other resources, educational resources. Help desk. So help desk is your resource for eCC or all of our products. It holds the encyclopedia of our product documentation. It also holds our community, our release notes, our news and updates. So I want to show you this within the presentation because it's very important to know what your resources are. And the communal aspect of the help desk is really awesome. So what you can do is within each article, you can comment in the article. And so you can build an aspect of community within each particular article, each particular subject matter. One area I want to bring your attention to is within the eCC desktop knowledge base, and I created this specific area called Managing Inventory using eCC Desktop. And this is the root of where I've taken the presentation from. You know, it goes into how eCC handles bundles products with Magento, how it handles products with options in BigCommerce, transferring between either QuickBooks financials or point of sale, you know, attributes with Zencart. I mean, if you start at using the product module, the basics, you will understand how to use this area or how products are structured. So that's a really good resource. Another really cool resource is in our blog. And the reason why I bring your direction to the blog is because our CEO wrote this article about products. So to get to the blog, you go to Resources Blog, and it's from February 20th, 2012. And, you know, Parag goes into a great explanation of the challenges of managing products, attributes, options, and variations. So kind of, you know, if you want, you can read that. You can review this webinar again, and because product management is essential to e-commerce. The next thing I want to show you, another piece of your resource, is our friendly support team. So our support team is here to help you. If you run into errors, you see our number right there, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6. If you have any questions, support@bgilit.com. And I also want to talk about the webinars that are coming up. So we already had a Getting Started webinar, which was awesome. Last week we had a desktop automation webinar, which is all about the scheduler. That's been recorded. You can watch that at your leisure. Today we're talking about inventory. Next week we're talking about shipping. Shipping and shipping all day, every day. So shipping with eCC Desktop, shipping with Shiplark, which is exactly the same. So if you are thinking about shipping, thinking about using eCC for shipping, if you're using another shipping solution and want to know how to tie that into eCC, this webinar is for you. And again, I want to mention that this webinar is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to watch this one at your leisure. So you can go to our webinar page on our website and register for the webinar next week. Cool. So do I have any other questions? As of now, let's see. Any other questions? Looking for questions. All right. I don't see any other questions. One thing I want to talk about, and it's a question that I didn't get, and I was hoping I got this question, but I do want to address it. It's how do you manage inventory in multiple channels? I think that I'm going to structure an entire webinar solely to that purpose because it combines the knowledge of matching criteria and mapping. And kind of the core of it is, let's say you've got your own website, your data has been standardized, everything matches, it's great. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to put my products in a marketplace. Marketplace makes the rules. So, you know, like for example, Amazon may have its own ISBN or its own identifier for a product, and you don't have the power to make sure your data is the same. Using mapping is a great way to compensate for that. So it'll be techniques into kind of how to use mapping with a combination of matching when selling products in multiple channels and automating all of that. So I think that's going to be for an entirely separate webinar in itself. So stay tuned to that. If you want to attend that webinar or have questions about kind of when that webinar is, you can always send us an email at cs@webgility.com, and I can see what we can do about making it for next month. So I do want to thank everyone for joining today. It's been a great class, and I really do enjoy these webinars, and there will be more because the core of WebGility is to, we all have a very intelligent group here at this company, and we're all experts in our particular areas, and we want to give our expertise to you. And even if you have used eCC for 2 years, it's always my philosophy that learning never stops. And you never stop that learning by always being engaged. So we're going to be engaging with you a lot more. We're going to offer these webinars to offer our expertise to help you make your business successful, because running it should be completely easy. So I want to thank everyone for joining today. And this will be recorded. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And again, thank you very much for your attendance, and hope to see you next week. Have a great day.